My son told me I was too old, too slow, too forgetful to look after my own grandkids. He hired a nanny to replace me, but what he didn't know was that same nanny would one day inherit everything he thought was his. If you've ever felt taken for granted, stick around. This one's for you. Please click the like button and subscribe so this story can reach others who need to hear it. The smell of burnt toast still hung in the air, a faint, forgotten memory. I was sitting on the rug in Leo's room, his little Lego spaceship broken into a dozen pieces around me. Amelia, who was 7, was on the bed, sketching something with intense concentration. Leo, at 5, was making engine noises, a constant, low hum that filled the quiet house. My son Mark and his wife, Sarah, had been out for hours, probably at some new restaurant downtown. They always went out. I always stayed here with the kids. It had been like this for years. A rhythm I knew in my bones. I loved it. I really did. The sticky fingers, the endless questions, the way Leo still tucked his head under my arm when he got sleepy. It felt like home. A second chance at motherhood. Maybe. The front door clicked open around 10. I heard Mark's voice, a little too loud, then Sarah's soft laugh. They came into the living room, their faces flushed from the cold night air. Mark saw me first. He cleared his throat. "Mom," he said, and his voice was different, harder. "Maybe." Amelia looked up from her drawing. Leo stopped his engine noises. My stomach tightened, a familiar clench I'd learned to recognize over the years when something wasn't quite right. Mark sat on the edge of the sofa, not quite looking at me. "Mom." He started again. "Sarah and we've been talking. We think we're going to go in another direction." My hands, which had been reaching for a green Lego brick, paused. Direction? What did that mean? Sarah was picking at a loose thread on the cushion. She wouldn't meet my eyes. "It's nothing personal, Mom," Mark continued, his voice stiff now, like he was reading from a script. "It's just, well, the kids are getting older. They need different care. You're just not sharp enough anymore, Mom. It's too risky." My mouth felt dry. Too risky. I looked at Leo, whose eyes were wide. He was just looking at me, waiting. I had just tucked him in his bed. I remember his little hand in mine, holding on tight. I remember his little hand in mine, holding on tight. Humiliation washed over me, a hot wave that started in my chest and burned my cheeks. I just nodded, picked up my bag from the floor and walked out the door. The burnt toast smell replaced by the sharp, clean scent of their expensive air freshener. That night, back in my own quiet condo, the words echoed, asterisk not sharp enough, too risky. Asterisk my hands felt cold. Still, I looked at them. These hands had built a life. Hadn't they? Mark had been so small when his father died. A car accident, quick and brutal. One day I was a wife, a young mother with plans. And the next I was just a mother, a single mother, with a mortgage and a baby who cried through the nights. I remembered working 2 jobs, a waitress during the day, cleaning offices after Mark was asleep, my own dreams, the art classes I'd wanted to take, the little shop I'd planned to open. They just faded like old photographs. I gave up my savings so he could have the best preschool, then later, so he could go to that good college out of state. He called me every Sunday, sometimes for only 5 minutes, just to say he was busy. I never minded. I told myself it meant he was doing well. When he graduated, I flew out there, sat in the auditorium, my chest bursting with pride, even though he introduced me to his friends simply as my mom. Not the woman who worked 2 jobs so I could be here. Just my mom. Then came the down payment for his first apartment. A loan I co-signed and ended up paying most of. Then the down payment for his house, the one I had just left. I remembered painting the nursery myself, buying the little blue blankets. He always said, "Thanks, Mom, I owe you everything." Funny, wasn't it? I built his life with my hands. And now he tells me they're too shaky to hold his kids. He stood there in his expensive shoes, in the house I'd helped him buy, telling me I was old and useless. It felt like a betrayal, quiet and precise, like a surgeon's cut. I looked at my hands again. They weren't shaky, not yet. A week later, I found a little dinosaur-shaped birthday card in my purse. It was for Leo. His birthday was coming up, and I knew how much he loved those goofy plastic dinosaurs. I debated whether to drop it off. My son's words still stung. A persistent, dull ache, but it was Leo. He wouldn't understand, so I drove over, pulling into their driveway, which always seemed a little too clean, a little too perfect. The door opened before I even had a chance to ring the bell. A woman stood there, mid-30s, with kind eyes and a neat ponytail. She was holding Amelia's hand. "You must be Grandma Anne," she said, and her voice was soft, not like Sarah's often clipped tones. She smiled. A genuine, warm smile. "I'm Marina, it's so good to finally meet you." She stepped aside, and Leo, seeing me, let out a little squeal and ran into my arms. I felt his small body press against me, a familiar comfort. He smelled like crayons and sunshine. Marina didn't say anything about me being not sharp enough. She just watched, a small, knowing smile on her face as I ruffled Leo's hair. The kids seemed to like her. They followed her around the kitchen, chattering about their day, which she listened to with easy patience. Marina was professional, yes, but there was a warmth to her, a genuine interest in the children that felt right. My son had replaced me. I watched her interact with the kids, watched the way Amelia leaned into her when she spoke. I felt a sharp, hollow ache in my chest. It was a strange mix of relief. The kids were in good hands, and a profound sense of being utterly redundant. I didn't blame Marina. She was just doing her job, but the sight of her, so effortlessly taking my place, made the knot in my stomach tighten. After that day, the invitations just stopped. No more calls for weekend babysitting. No more texts asking me to pick up the kids from school when Sarah had an impromptu yoga class. The phone, which used to buzz with messages from Mark or Sarah about the kids' schedules, went silent. I tried calling sometimes, just to hear their voices, just to ask about Leo's progress with his dinosaur counting, or Amelia's latest elaborate drawing, but I got short replies. "We're busy right now, Mom," or "Everything's fine, we'll call you back." They never did. I tried to tell myself it was just a phase, that they were busy. Mark had a big project at work. Sarah was organizing some charity event. People got busy, it happened, but the silence stretched. Day after day, week after week. Then the holidays started rolling around. Thanksgiving came and went. No invitation for dinner. Christmas was a blur of quiet evenings in my own condo, watching old movies. I sent gifts, of course, wrapped them carefully, tied them with bows. They probably ended up under their tree. I heard nothing. Then, a few weeks later, my friend Linda called me. "Anne, was Leo's birthday party last Saturday? I saw pictures on Facebook. It looked lovely." My heart sank. Last Saturday, I hadn't known. Mark had posted photos of Leo blowing out candles on a dinosaur cake, surrounded by his friends, by Sarah's family, by Marina, my own son, my grandchildren. I found out about their milestones, their parties, their little lives through a public social media feed. It was a cold, calculated dismissal, quieter than any shout, deeper than any insult. It was a silent freeze-out. They weren't just keeping me from the kids, they were erasing me. My financial planner, Mr. Henderson, was a kind, quiet man with neat silver hair. He'd handled my late husband's affairs, then mine, for over 20 years. I went to his office for my usual quarterly review, a routine I'd always found reassuring, a steady pulse in the chaos of life. He laid out the statements on his polished desk, the numbers and charts neatly organized. My inheritance from my sister, bless her heart, had been substantial: properties, investments, a robust portfolio. Mr. Henderson tapped a pen lightly on a spreadsheet. "Everything looks very healthy. Anne, you're well set for the future. Over 2 million, all told." I just nodded, looking out the window at the busy city street below. Cars moved, people rushed, oblivious. Mr. Henderson cleared his throat gently. "Now, Anne," he said, his voice dropping to a more personal tone, We haven't reviewed your estate plan in a few years. Have you decided on your beneficiaries? We should ensure everything is up to date, especially with your recent additions to the portfolio. I hesitated. I had decided, years ago, Mark, my son. Everything was set to go to him, outright. It had seemed so natural then, so obvious. He was my only child, he was family, but now, the thought felt like a bitter joke. My son who told me I was too old. My son who shut me out of his life. My son who found out about his own child's birthday party through a Facebook post. I looked at the numbers on the page. The zeros stretching out like a vast, empty road. That was the truth, but now, watching the traffic flow, a different thought started to form, slow and deliberate, like a heavy stone rolling downhill. But maybe I didn't anymore. Mother's Day, the second Sunday in May. The day when, for years, Mark would bring me flowers or Sarah would send a picture of the kids with a handmade card. I woke up that morning with a flicker of hope, a small, stubborn ember refusing to die. Maybe today they would remember. I brewed my tea, sat by the window, watching the robins peck at the lawn. The phone sat on the counter, silent. I didn't turn on the TV. I didn't want any distractions. I just waited. I cleaned the kitchen. I watered my plants. I even tried to read a book. But the words just swam on the page. Every time I heard a car on the street, my head snapped up. Every time my phone hummed with a notification, a grocery store coupon, a weather alert, my heart jumped. The day stretched on, long and empty. Noon came, then afternoon, then the long shadows of evening. The silence in my condo was thick, suffocating. No call, no text, no knock on the door, nothing. Finally, at 9 o'clock, a message popped up on my phone, not from Mark, from Linda, my friend. It was a picture. Mark, Sarah, the kids, all smiling, holding wine glasses in front of a vineyard sign. Linda had tagged Mark. "Looks like you all had a lovely Mother's Day brunch." She wrote, "My son, my daughter-in-law, my grandchildren at a vineyard without me." The kids were there, smiling, holding grape juice, their faces bright. My heart didn't just break, it shattered into 1,000 tiny, unseeable pieces. They had left the kids with Marina. Probably, while they went out and celebrated, oblivious to the silence in my home, to the hours I had spent waiting, listening for a sound that never came. Weeks passed after Mother's Day, a blur of quiet days and even quieter nights. I was trying to adjust, to find a new routine that didn't involve sticky little hands or Lego spaceships. Then, one Tuesday afternoon, my phone rang. I almost didn't answer. It was an unknown number. I picked it up, my voice cautious. "Hello, Grandma Ann," a soft voice. It was Marina, my breath caught in my throat. "I hope it's okay," I called. She said quickly, the kids, they miss you, they really do." A small, tentative warmth spread through my chest. "The kids, they missed me. They ask about you all the time." Marina continued. "Amelia drew a picture of you yesterday, sitting in a garden. Leo keeps asking if you'll come over for dinosaur stories." She paused. "I know it's not my place, but would you like to come to the park with us on Thursday? Just a casual visit." My hand trembled slightly as I held the phone. A casual visit. Not a formal family gathering I wasn't invited to. Not a silent freeze-out. Just a park. "Yes," I said, maybe a little too quickly. "Yes, I'd love to." Thursday came, bright and sunny. I drove to the park, my heart thrumming a little. Marina was there already, pushing Leo on the swing. Amelia perched on a bench, drawing in her sketchbook. When they saw me, both kids dropped what they were doing and ran, their arms outstretched. Leo launched himself at my legs, a joyful cannonball. Amelia hugged my waist. Their small bodies, their uninhibited joy, it was a balm. A cool compress on a long, aching wound. Marina just smiled, a gentle, understanding smile. "I told you," she whispered, as Leo burrowed his head into my side. "They really do talk about you all the time." In that moment, watching my grandchildren, feeling their small hands in mine, I knew Marina wasn't just a nanny, she was a bridge, a quiet, unexpected link to the people who still loved me. A bond, fragile but real, began to grow, A few days after our park visit, Marina called again. She asked if I'd like to have tea at my place, just the two of us. I was surprised but pleased. She arrived carrying a small box of French pastries, a thoughtful gesture. We sat in my living room, the afternoon sun streaming through the window, making dust motes dance in the air. We talked about the children, about their quirks, their funny sayings. It felt normal. Easy. Then, Marina put down her teacup, her expression shifting. She looked directly at me, her eyes serious. "Grandma Anne," she began, her voice low. "I need to tell you something. I think you should know what's being said." My stomach tightened. I knew what was coming, or at least, I thought I did. More talk about being old, probably. "Mark and Sarah," she continued, her voice steady. "They talk about you, a lot, to other people, too, when they think I'm not listening." She hesitated, then forged on. "They say awful things, that you're senile, that you're becoming forgetful, that you're a liability." My breath hitched. "Senile, they also say you hoard your money." Marina added, almost whispering, as if embarrassed to say it out loud. "That you have all this money and you won't help them out, that you're selfish." The words hung in the air, heavy and sharp. I felt a cold dread spread through me. It wasn't just about babysitting, it wasn't just about being replaced. This was calculated, this was an active campaign. They were building a narrative, a story they could tell. I sat there, stunned, my teacup cold in my hand. They weren't just excluding me, they were deliberately painting me as incompetent, as selfish, as someone who needed to be managed. It hit me then, a sickening realization. They weren't waiting for me to die, they were already planning around it. They were already trying to diminish me, to make me irrelevant, to make sure no one would question their right to my estate. My son, my own son, he was planning around my death. The next morning, I called my lawyer, Mr. Davidson. He was a stern man, all sharp angles and legal jargon, but reliable. I told his assistant I needed an urgent meeting to review my will. She fit me in for that afternoon. The office was quiet, the air cool and formal. Mr. Davidson listened patiently, his hands folded on his large desk, as I explained, carefully, what I wanted to do. I didn't mention Marina, or the kids, or the hurtful things Mark and Sarah had said. I kept it strictly professional. He pulled out my existing will, a thick document bound in a blue folder. He flipped through the pages, his eyes scanning the text. "Yes, Anne," he stated, his voice flat and factual. "As it stands, your son, Mark Thomas Sterling, is the sole primary beneficiary of your entire estate. Should he predecease you, his wife, Sarah, would then inherit everything." He looked up, his gaze unreadable. "Is there a particular clause you'd like to amend?" I gripped the arms of my chair. My son, who thought I was senile, his wife, who couldn't even manage a Mother's Day call, all of it. Everything I had worked for, everything I had inherited, everything I had saved, all of it would go to them. I pictured Mark's face when he told me I was too old, too risky. I pictured Sarah's averted gaze. I pictured Marina's kind smile, the children's eager faces. "Yes," I said, my voice steady, though my heart was pounding a frantic rhythm against my ribs. "I want to change all of it." I leaned forward slightly. "What if I wanted to remove them entirely?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. "What if I wanted to change that, to make sure that not one penny of my money, not one single asset, ever goes to them?" Mr. Davidson's expression didn't change, he simply picked up his pen. "That," he said, "is certainly within your legal rights." And the phone rang that evening, a harsh, insistent sound. It was Mark. His voice was tight, strained. "Mom," he began, "we need to talk." He didn't wait for an answer. "I'm coming over." He hung up before I could respond. He usually waited for an invitation. This was different. My stomach clenched. 20 minutes later, he was at my door, his face flushed, his jaw tight. He pushed past me, not waiting to be asked in, and stood in the middle of my living room, looking around as if he was inspecting something. "What are you doing, Mom?" he demanded, his voice rising. "Marina told us the kids have been seeing you. You're manipulating them, you're undermining her authority. What's going on?" He looked at me, his eyes narrowed. "Are you lonely? Is that it? Because this isn't healthy." He paced a few steps, then turned back to me, his voice taking on a sickly sweet, patronizing tone. Look, Mom, Sarah and I, we're worried about you. You're getting older, you're forgetting things. Maybe it's time we think about assisted living. Don't you think you'd be safer there? We could look into some nice places. It would be for your own good. My hands curled into fists at my sides. Safer? He wasn't worried about my safety. He was worried about control, about my assets. He wanted me out of the way, neatly packaged. My mind diminished. My money accessible. It wasn't about care, it was about convenience, about inheritance. His words, dripping with false concern, felt like a slap. I looked at him, really looked at him. The boy I had sacrificed everything for, the man who now saw me as a burden, a problem to be solved, an obstacle to his financial future. This wasn't just disrespect. This wasn't just betrayal. This was an attempt to erase my autonomy, to put me away like an old doll. The line had been crossed, the tipping point. I took a deep breath, the anger a cold, hard knot in my chest. Mark, I said, my voice surprisingly steady, get out. After Mark left, the quiet of my condo was deafening. I didn't cry, there were no tears left, it seemed, just a cold, hard certainty that settled deep in my bones. I walked to my small writing desk, pulled out my journal, the one with the worn leather cover, and uncapped my pen. The pages were filled with mundane thoughts, grocery lists, reflections on a good book. Tonight, it would hold something else, something final. I wrote, my hand steady, asterisk, he sees me as a burden. He sees me as an obstacle, he sees me as a means to an end. Asterisk, I paused, the pen hovering over the page. Asterisk, she sees me as a human. She sees my grandchildren. She sees me. She simply sees me. Asterisk, the contrast was stark, brutal in its simplicity. My son's calculating gaze versus Marina's genuine kindness. There was no longer any doubt, no room for hesitation. He wanted to lock me away, claim my money, and forget I ever existed. Marina simply wanted me to come to the park with the children. I knew what I had to do. The decision, once a terrifying precipice, now felt like solid ground beneath my feet. It was clear, it was necessary. I closed the journal, the thought of their reaction, of Mark's fury, of Sarah's icy disdain, no longer held any power over me. They had already stripped me of so much. They had already shown me their true colors. This was not revenge. Not exactly. It was self-preservation. It was a choice. Finally, to be seen, to be valued, to be loved for myself, not for what I possessed. The next morning, I called Mr. Davidson's office again. I told his assistant I was ready to proceed with the changes to my will. Immediately, the meeting with Mr. Davidson was precise, efficient, and utterly devoid of emotion. Exactly what I needed. I sat across from him, and we went through each clause, each asset, item by item. My voice was calm, clear as I dictated my wishes, my condo, my investment accounts, the antique furniture, the jewelry, everything, 40% of my entire estate. I stated, looking at Mr. Davidson, we'll go to Marina Petrova. He made a note, no reaction, just the scratch of his pen. Then, 20% to each of my grandchildren, Amelia Sterling and Leo Sterling. These funds are to be held in trust, accessible to them when they turn 25. I want a clear stipulation that Mark and Sarah Sterling are to have no access or control over these trusts at any point. He nodded, adding more detailed notes. Another 10%, I continued, will be used to establish an elderly care fund in the name of my late sister, Eleanor. The fund will provide grants for seniors who need financial assistance for in-home care to avoid assisted living facilities if they choose. This felt right, a way to honor Eleanor and help others avoid the fate Mark had envisioned for me. And the remaining 10%, I finished. I wish to retain for my discretion, to be used before my death for travel, personal expenses, or any charitable contributions I deem fit. Mr. Davidson looked up, Anne, are you absolutely certain about these beneficiaries? This is a significant departure from your previous intentions. I met his gaze squarely. I am entirely certain, Mr. Davidson, more certain than I've ever been about anything. He explained the legal implications, the potential for challenge, the need for witnesses. I listened, absorbing every word. He assured me it would be legally sound, airtight, and irreversible without my explicit written consent. We signed the new documents that day. My hand steady, my signature firm. The pen scratched loudly in the quiet room. It was done. A few weeks later, after the paperwork was all finalized, I invited Marina over for lunch. She came, bringing a small bouquet of wildflowers. We ate sandwiches and talked about Amelia's school play, about Leo's latest fascination with excavators. It was easy, comfortable. As we were finishing our tea, I reached into my bag and pulled out a large, official-looking envelope. Marina looked at it, then at me, a question in her eyes. Marina, I began, my voice a little softer than usual. I've been doing some thinking. You've been so wonderful to the children and to me. She looked down, a blush rising on her cheeks. That's just my job, Grandma Anne, she murmured. It's more than a job. I corrected gently. You showed up, you were kind. You made my grandkids smile when I couldn't, and you told me the truth, even when it was difficult. I pushed the envelope across the table. This is a gift, a down payment on a modest home. I know you've been saving, hoping to buy a place of your own. Marina picked up the envelope, her fingers tracing the seal. She opened it slowly, her eyes widening as she saw the check. The bank statement, her jaw dropped slightly. Grandma Anne, she whispered, her voice barely audible, her eyes filled with tears. Why would you do this for me? I don't understand. She looked at me, confusion and gratitude warring on her face. Because, I said, reaching across the table to gently squeeze her hand. Sometimes, the people who are supposed to be there for you aren't, and sometimes a stranger, a kind person who simply does what's right, becomes family. You've given me peace of mind, Marina. You've given the children joy. This is just a small thank you from a grateful grandmother. She just stared at me, then at the check, then back at me, tears streaming down her face. It felt good, a different kind of satisfaction than I had ever imagined. It didn't take long for word to spread. Marina, suddenly having the means to put a down payment on a small house. Raised eyebrows. Mark and Sarah lived in a small, insular bubble, and news, especially news involving money, traveled fast through the extended family grapevine. It was probably Sarah's mother or one of her gossipy aunts who finally called Mark. My phone rang again. A few days later. And this time, there was no pretense of polite conversation. Mark's voice was laced with barely controlled fury. "Mom," he roared, his voice cracking with outrage. "What the hell is going on? We hear you're giving money to the nanny. What is this? Is she extorting you? Is she taking advantage?" He showed up at my condo less than an hour later, unannounced, just as before, but this time, his face was red, contorted with rage. He slammed his hand on my kitchen counter. "Are you out of your mind? Mom, giving money to a stranger? She's after your money, Mom. She's manipulating you. Are you really that naive? She's probably got you signed up for all sorts of scams, hasn't she?" He paced the small kitchen, his expensive shoes scuffing my linoleum. "You're clearly not in your right mind. This is exactly what I was talking about. We need to get you proper help." I stood by the kitchen table, my hands clasped in front of me. I let him rant, his words washing over me like dirty water, when he finally paused. Breathless, his eyes bulging, I looked at him calmly. My voice was quiet, almost a whisper, but it cut through the silence he had left. "Funny," I said, looking him straight in the eye. "That's exactly what she said about you." He froze. His face went from red to a ghostly pale. The anger drained from him, replaced by a dawning comprehension, and something else, fear. He looked like he'd been slapped. I just watched him. The silence between us, now thick with unspoken accusations, and the weight of a long, calculated betrayal. That summer, After Mark's furious departure was strangely peaceful. He didn't call, didn't show up again. The silence from his end was a welcome relief, a space to breathe. Marina, the kids, and I fell into a new, easy rhythm. We didn't need Mark or Sarah's permission. Marina would pick me up, or I'd drive over to her new little house, the one that had clearly sent ripples through my son's life. We spent long, sunny afternoons in the garden. I taught Amelia how to plant snapdragons, how to turn the soil, how to feel the earth between her fingers. Leo helped me water, his small hose stream sometimes missing the plants entirely and soaking his sneakers instead. We baked cookies, our hands dusted with flour, the smell of vanilla filling Marina's cozy kitchen. I showed Amelia how to sew a simple stitch, how to mend a small tear in her teddy bear's arm. We read old family recipes, the ones my grandmother had passed down, and tried to recreate them, often with hilarious results. There were no grand pronouncements, no dramatic declarations, just quiet moments, shared laughter, and the easy comfort of being together. I watched the kids, their faces bright, their questions endless. I watched Marina, her patience unwavering, her smile genuine. I reflected on the peace of it all. It wasn't about being useful or earning my place. It was about finally feeling loved for who I was, not for what I could provide. It was a summer of healing, of rediscovery, a gentle unfolding of a new, unexpected kind of family. The air smelled of fresh-cut grass and warm cookies, and for the first time in a long time, my heart felt light. The peace of summer, like all good things, couldn't last forever. One bright Tuesday morning, the phone rang. It was Mr. Davidson, my lawyer. His voice, usually so steady and formal, had an edge to it. "Anne," he said without preamble, "I have an alert for you. Your son, Mark, has filed a petition with the court." My stomach dropped. I knew this was coming, but the reality of it still hit like a physical blow. He's attempting to gain power of attorney over your affairs, claiming mental decline and an inability to manage your own finances. My blood ran cold, then hot with fury. Mental decline, after everything I'd done, after everything I'd given. He was trying to invalidate me completely. He wanted to strip away my autonomy, my dignity, my very identity. It was a full frontal assault, a desperate grab for control disguised as concern. But a strange calm settled over me. Too, this wasn't unexpected. This was what he did, and this was what I had prepared for. "What's his evidence?" I asked, my voice tight. Mr. Davidson sighed. "He's citing your recent, generous gift to Miss Petrova, along with vague assertions about your judgment. He's also trying to present a narrative of your increasing isolation from the family." Isolation, I thought. Asterisk my isolation, which you created. Asterisk I took a deep breath. "Mr. Davidson," I said, my voice firm, "I am not mentally in decline. I have every record, every therapy evaluation from last year, every meticulous financial statement from my planner to prove full capacity. I have kept every letter, every text message, every detail of their deliberate exclusion, and I have witnesses." "Indeed, Anne," Mr. Davidson replied, his tone growing more confident. "You are well prepared. We will file a strong rebuttal. It seems we'll be seeing them in court." A courtroom, my own son, claiming I was crazy, that I was incapable, all to get his hands on money he felt was his by right. I closed my eyes for a moment. This was it, the real fight. The courtroom was sterile, hushed, filled with the low murmur of anticipation. Mark sat at a table with his lawyer, looking stiff in a dark suit. Sarah was beside him, her face tight, avoiding my gaze. I sat with Mr. Davidson, my spine straight, my hands folded calmly in my lap. Mark's lawyer, a slick, aggressive man, started by painting a picture of me as a vulnerable elderly woman, easily influenced, making erratic decisions. He talked about Marina as a predator, a gold digger who had insinuated herself into my life. He claimed I was being exploited by a younger woman who saw me as an easy target. Then, Mark took the stand. He spoke of his deep concern for my well-being. the difficult decision to seek assisted living, the unusual behavior of my recent financial choices. He looked at me once, his eyes cold, devoid of any genuine emotion. It was a performance, carefully rehearsed. Then it was Marina's turn. She walked to the stand, quiet and composed, dressed simply but neatly. She spoke in a calm, clear voice, answering every question honestly. She described how she met me, how the children missed me, how she had simply reached out. She spoke of the quiet afternoons in the park, the baking, the gardening. She explained the gift not as an expectation, but as a total surprise, a gesture of unexpected kindness. She testified to my lucidity, my sharp mind, my genuine love for my grandchildren. She didn't sensationalize, didn't accuse, she just stated the facts, her quiet truth ringing out in the solemn room. The judge, a no-nonsense woman with sharp eyes, listened intently. She asked pointed questions, digging beneath the surface. Finally, she delivered her ruling. She commended Marina's testimony, dismissed Mark's petition for power of attorney as unfounded and lacking substantial evidence of my mental decline. She then, to my shock, issued a restraining order against Mark and Sarah, preventing them from interfering with my personal affairs or harassing me further. A quiet victory. The air in the courtroom felt lighter. Suddenly, Mark's face was a mask of disbelief and fury. My own son, I had won the courtroom ruling, a public record, didn't stay quiet for long. Local news, always on the lookout for a human interest story, picked it up. The headline was stark. Unavoidable. Elderly woman wins case against son in will dispute. Leaves fortune to nanny. My face, a rather unflattering photo from my driver's license, was plastered on the front page of the local paper. The story spread like wildfire, picked up by online forums, then national news blogs. Suddenly, I wasn't just Anne, the grandmother, I was a symbol. My mailbox, which had been so empty for so long, overflowed with letters, not from Mark or Sarah, of course, but from strangers. Letters of support, of solidarity. Women sharing their own stories of being dismissed, of family disputes, of the quiet indignities of aging. Some were angry, some were poignant, but all echoed a similar sentiment. Asterisk, thank you for speaking up. Asterisk, then came the invitations. A local senior advocacy group asked me to speak at their annual event. A women's legal aid society wanted me to share my experience. I was surprised, overwhelmed, but also strangely invigorated. My story, which had felt so personal, so painful, was resonating with so many others. It wasn't just my fight anymore. It was for every elderly person who had been made to feel invisible. Every parent betrayed by a child's greed. Every individual fighting for their own dignity and autonomy. I accepted the invitation to speak. My voice, which had been silenced for so long, was finally being heard, not just by a judge, but by a community. The dust settled, slowly, after the court case. The newspaper stories faded from the front page, replaced by other headlines, but my life, the one I had built with Mark, was undeniably over. The restraining order, the bitter courtroom exchange. There was no going back, and that was okay. It was more than okay, it was freeing. I decided to sell my old condo. It felt too big, too quiet, too filled with ghosts of the past. With some of the discretionary funds from my new will, I found a charming little bungalow not far from Marina's new house. It had a small garden, plenty of sunshine, and no lingering memories of a son who saw me only as a problem to be solved. I moved in, slowly, carefully, curating my new space. Marina helped me unpack boxes, the children running around, their laughter echoing in the new, empty rooms. Life took on a new, gentler rhythm. Sundays became sacred. Marina, Amelia, Leo, and I would gather at my new bungalow. We'd make tea, simple meals, and just be together. Amelia would show me her latest drawings. Leo would tell me elaborate stories about his imaginary dinosaurs. We would sit on the porch, watching the sunset, sharing quiet jokes. There was laughter, genuine warmth, and a sense of ease I hadn't realized I was missing. I was on better terms with myself than ever, free from the constant anxiety of a son's judgment, the sting of his indifference. I had lost a son, yes, but I had found something else, something real. One evening, after we had finished dinner, and the last of the sunshine was fading from the sky, Amelia leaned her head against my shoulder. Leo was already asleep on the sofa, a small, warm weight. She looked up at me, her eyes wide, thoughtful. "Grandma," she whispered, her voice soft. "Why did Daddy say you couldn't babysit anymore?" Her question hung in the air, innocent and direct, cutting through the comfortable silence. I paused, my arm around her small shoulders. How do you explain greed and betrayal to a 7-year-old? How do you tell her that her own father chose money over his mother? I looked out the window at the twilight sky, watching the first stars appear. "Sometimes, sweetheart," I began, choosing my words carefully. "Grown-ups don't know how to see the people who love them most. They get caught up in things that don't really matter, and they forget what's truly important." I squeezed her hand gently. "They might look away, but real family never looks away." She nodded slowly, taking it in, perhaps not fully understanding, but accepting the quiet truth in my voice. I may have lost a son. That was a bitter pill, a wound that would always be there, a faint ache, but I gained something far more precious: truth, love, and peace. I gained a granddaughter who still curled up next to me, a grandson whose laughter filled my days, and a young woman who had shown me more kindness and loyalty than my own flesh and blood. I had chosen well, and in that quiet, starlit moment, I knew I had finally won.